Well, g'day church, and thanks for tuning in with us as we go through another period of lockdown in an attempt to control the spread of COVID-19. And so we're limited to doing church only online today. It's great to have you with us, and we'd love this to be more than just a one-way connection, a one-way interaction. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, to ask questions, have a conversation, if you'd like to know how you can take anything that we consider this today further, then get in touch. So our contact details will be in the description of this video below, and we'd love to hear from you if there's any way we can help. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if many of you feel like you're living in the fast lane. Like life's just kind of going at a relentless pace, and you're pursuing goals, and maybe for you feel like that effort, that pursuit is paying off, and you're actually achieving those goals. You've got lots of what you've aimed for in life, or it seems within reach. Maybe instead, you feel like it's a bit relentless. You'd actually kind of wish you could move out of the slow lane for a bit. It's just a bit too overwhelming. I can't take a breather. But perhaps for others of you, you don't feel like you're in the fast lane at all. You feel like you're stuck in the slow lane. And you see other people who seem to be in the fast lane, and they're just whizzing past you. Like they seem to be achieving so much. They seem to have so much success and happiness and so on. And your poor little cheap car just can't keep up. If only you could achieve what they've got. If only you had a hope of the lifestyle that others have. We get presented in all sorts of ways with some sort of notion of the good life, don't we? That comes to us through TV and the kind of shows and the people that we see presented there, and what the good life would be. It comes through relentlessly in advertising, all the things you can have, the people that are there with they're happy, they're attractive, they've got it, and if you have this, then that'll be the good life or a step towards it. We see it in social media. We see other people's lives shared, or at least the parts of their lives that they're willing to share, and take the whole package. And those who have got the nice home, they've got the nice car, they've got security, they're in control. This is the good life, as we've kind of come to expect it to be. But is that really the best measure to use for the good life? Would it really be good if that was the measure that we ought to use? You see, what if that is kind of the good life, but then for whatever reason you find yourself missing out on that? You haven't managed to achieve that, whereas others have. Maybe situations like COVID and a lockdown and the implications that has for your business or for your education, because you're missing out, and so therefore you fall behind and you can't live the good life. What if you do achieve it? What if that is the good life and you manage to get there? You've got sort of success according to what we're presented with as being success. But will it be enough? Once it's there, will you feel like, I've reached it, I'm okay, I'm happy? Or perhaps be inclined to feel like, well, then now what's next? And we're kind of been taught for a long time to understand the world in terms of kind of survival of the fittest. It's the strongest that survive. That's the way nature works. And that's kind of a little bit okay if we're the ones who are getting ahead and we're among the strong and it works out well for me. I get the good life. But we get a little bit uneasy in terms of that principle of life as we see it in others. We don't like others to get ahead at the expense of ourselves or other people when we see others who are disadvantaged to get left behind. It troubles us. It doesn't sit right. Now, we've been exploring as a church, we've been exploring the life of Jesus as it's recorded for us in the Gospel of Luke, Luke's account of Jesus' life, to understand what Jesus was like, to understand what he taught and the implications of that for us right here and now. And today's episode is aspect of teaching, Jesus teaching about what is the good life, or what he calls the blessed life. But as we see it unfold, it's a very counterintuitive, it's an unexpected way of evaluating it. And so we want to explore the good life according to what Jesus presents. And we'll see that this section from Luke chapter 6 beginning at verse 12, the part we're up to. We'll read Luke chapter 6, verse 12 to 26, and Brendan's going to read that for us.
Good morning, church. This morning I'm reading from Luke 6, 12 to 26. It's titled The 12 Apostles. In these days he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12 women whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called Zelot, and Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. And he came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the sea coast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him and healed all of them. And he lifted his eyes on his disciples and said, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil. On account of the Son of Man, rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For so their fathers did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who will laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. So far the reading. Have a great week.
Well, thanks for that, Brendan. And so far, as we see again here, so far in our journey through Luke, we see a range of people who are drawn to Jesus, drawn to him both for what he taught and the way he healed people, the miracles that he did. Both of those stood out in some way. His teaching stood out as different, as having authority that they weren't used to. And so he's got many disciples, many sort of followers. Those people are sort of committed to say, yeah, there's something about this guy, we're going to follow him, plus a whole pile of others who are maybe on that journey saying, hey, what's this Jesus fellow about? And so then we get in verse 13, we see that Jesus chooses 12 particular people to be his closest disciples, those who are going to be with him in the work that he's doing through his ministry. They're going to learn from him. That's essentially what a disciple is. A disciple is a learner, not just learning intellectual knowledge, but learning a way of life, learning Jesus, seeing him in action. They're going to learn a person. That's ultimately a description of anyone who chooses to be a disciple of Jesus. They're a learner. They're going to learn him, learn a way of life. But these 12 that Jesus picks, they're not described in any sort of standout way in terms of their qualifications or their status in life, in terms of being great celebrities or powerful leaders or anything. They're just 12, as far as we can tell, ordinary people. But they're ordinary people that Jesus can invest in. And as he invests in them, then great things are possible as they learn from Jesus. All who follow Jesus are disciples, learners of Jesus. But these 12 are also designated to be apostles, and that is unique. That's a unique role. An apostle is a messenger sent with a commission. And that particularly their commission was to be eyewitnesses of Jesus' life and his resurrection. And that was a role that they alone have, we don't have, because we didn't see him on earth. And so we see that captured, for example, in the Apostle John, his first letter that we have, or Peter in his first letter, both in the first chapters. They kind of describe this idea that what we've seen, what we touch, what we observe, we share that with you. That was something the apostles had uniquely, and that's why it says that he designated them apostles. But this learning, this nature of being a disciple, which is more broad than just the apostles, this learning will take many forms. As I said, through actual instruction, learning things, knowledge, but it also we learn it by example, learn it by observation, seeing Jesus in action. Now here we get some of his instruction, verses 20 and following. We actually get some of the teaching that Jesus has been declaring in various places. You see, he came down from the mountain, he stood on a level place, and he taught. Now, this is quite similar teaching to what we get in Matthew's account of Jesus' life, in what the better-known Sermon on the Mount, which is recorded in Matthew chapter 5 to 7. It's more extensive, covers things in a slightly different way. But we might think, well, hang on, was he on a mountain or was he on a level place? Perhaps this seems like a bit of a contradiction. This is the sort of thing that maybe people pick up, maybe you've wondered about, or others pick up and say, hey, the gospel accounts don't actually agree. They contradict each other. Matthew's telling us it was on a mountain. Luke's telling us it was on a level place. Which one's right? Well, probably actually they're both right. You see, Jesus went around from place to place proclaiming a message. And he would have repeated large elements of that message in a variety of places because they didn't have YouTube where he could just do it once and then everyone could kind of tune in. He actually had to go and give that message again and again. And even today, itinerant preachers go around and they give sometimes a similar message in different places. Actually, YouTube's now made that a little bit harder because sometimes people come expecting to hear something a bit unique and they think, hey, I already heard that message. I heard it on YouTube when you preached on the other side of the world. Jesus would have preached similar messages in many different places. So here we've got an account when he was on a plane and he shares this teaching, the teaching that comes from verse 20 and following. But it's kind of a shocking, surprising, very topsy-turvy to our normal expectations teaching about the good life. It's really surprising. Or the blessed life, as he describes it. Blessed are they. Blessed isn't a word that we use very often except in church circles, in Christian circles. It comes up in the Bible, but it's not a word that you hear every day. To be blessed is really to be in a situation that is generally regarded by others as to be in a good place. That's good. That's sort of an enviable spot to be in. Perhaps we see this in the attraction to reality TV shows that they put on, about all sorts of different things. And we see ordinary people who've got the hope of achieving a romantic relationship with someone who's incredibly funny or attractive and so on. And it's kind of like, yeah, that'd be really good. And you kind of want to live vicariously through that. There's people who are incredibly athletic or competitive. There's people who can cook like the pros. And they're just ordinary people. That's a good place to be. That's what we might get a bit of an insight to what it means to be blessed. But Jesus here presents us with the sort of unexpected idea of the good life, of being blessed. He doesn't present us with an idea that maybe we're inclined to have about what it means to have Jesus in our life, in the sense of, well, have Jesus in your life and that'll be the key to realizing your dreams. Have Jesus in your life and everything will turn out. As long as you live a pretty good life and you pray lots and you go to church lots, then you can expect life to fall into place. Now, there's degrees to which things work out better as we follow God's plan. And I'm convinced that Jesus' path is the best path to be on. But the reality is often the best path to be on is actually the hard path to be on. For example, we see there that Jesus, before he appoints the 12, he prays all night. If you're going to make a big decision to have a prayer session, a prayer vigil, and you go out all night and spend time praying about that before you make the decision, that seems like an appropriate thing to do. That's why Jesus does it before this big decision. If ever you're going to get things all to work out, well, that'd be the way to do it. But notice in verse 16 that we see that as Jesus makes the choice, he ends up still with a traitor. Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor, was among the 12 that he chose. Wasn't that everything just fell into place and everything worked out wonderfully because he happened to live the right way? But this is not because God's plan failed. It's not because the prayer didn't work. It was God's bigger plan, God's bigger purpose. It wasn't just about comfort and ease for Jesus. It was about Jesus going to the cross. And Judas' betrayal played a key part in that. So it's not just about a life of realizing your dreams if you just happen to get Jesus and go to church enough. But here's the shock. As he talks about the blessed life, it's the poor who are blessed. He says it's those who are overlooked. It's those who are going without and they're hungry. It's not the normal evaluation we use, is it? This is not a place that we want to be. And we see the place we do want to be in other people who seem to have it all. That's the more natural way to go, isn't it? And Jesus is saying that those who are hated, those who are excluded, they've got the blessed life. With the ones with few followers on social media, not many people react to their posts. We've got those who weep. You know the feeling of sadness, something just hits you in life. You're overwhelmed with your sense of inability or some loss, and you just weep, you cry, because it just feels hopeless, and you just can't sort of say, well, I'm going to stop crying. There's this despair, and Jesus is saying, these people, the hungry, the weeping, the rejected, they're in the blessed position. And for those that we naturally think are on the path to the good life, we see the flip side in verse 24 and following, that those who've got riches and abundance and happiness and fame and the affirmation of others, well, they're in a situation where Jesus says, woe to them. They're not in a good place. This is all upside down, isn't it? This is all topsy-turvy to the way that we normally evaluate the good life versus what's not the good life. Why does he say woe to these people who seem to have what we generally regard as being the good life? It's because he's saying if that's all we get, then that's as good as it gets. You might get riches, you might get affirmation. If that's all you get, that's as good as it's ever going to get. If this life is all that there is, that's the best you can have to hope for. But Jesus is saying there's so much more that you're going to miss out on if you've just set your hopes on what we can achieve right now. And these woes are kind of, I think, key to understanding why it is that to be poor is to be blessed and so on. Because it's the key to understanding this sort of counterintuitive perspective. Because you see there, woe to those who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now. It's the idea of that you've got what you're after. You've got what you think it's about. You see, the point isn't that poverty and hunger and mourning and whatever are goals to seek after and to actually try and bring about. The thing is, when you've received your consolation, you've got what you're after, you feel full, you're much less likely to see any sort of need for something that is beyond yourself. Because you've got it. You've got everything. But you've only got what you've built for you, for now. You've managed to sort of become king of your life. You've got things under control, but you're not really ultimately a very powerful king because other things can unravel that all very quickly. We see this being played out, this inclination not to depend on God when you've got everything. We see it being played out in our Western culture. As over time, the rise of sort of enlightenment thinking that we're all influenced by, and this inclination, this perception that we can explain all of life and all the way the world works without any need to refer to God. We can just put him out of the picture and life goes on. Who needs God? And we see it as the rise of affluence, the rise of our standard of living. We've got stuff. It comes from all sorts of places and the structures of society. Who needs God? And so dependence on God in our culture, as this thinking and as this affluence has increased, the reference to God has decreased. But still, we find we don't have all the answers. A number of times as I've listened to media releases from the politicians as they tried to grapple with the COVID outbreaks. And so a number of times they'll say, look, we don't have all the answers. We wish we had all the answers. We can't tell you exactly how this is going to turn out. Now, I'm not having a go at them. I wouldn't like to be in their shoes. They're making difficult decisions, and I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions. But nonetheless, they don't know all the answers, do they? We kind of think we're kings of our lives. We're actually not that in control. But those who are poor, those who are hungry, those who are weeping, those who recognise that life is not all it could be, who recognises there's a longing, a need for something more, they're those who are much more likely to actually see a need beyond themselves and to seek the help that can truly make life to be something else. Of course, it's not just any help. It's not just any solution. Because, poor people struggling with not having enough, they can still be just as inclined to see the answer as in possessions. The possessions they don't have, and if only they'd have that, if only they had more money. They can still look that. But the key is unfolded in the blessing description, the beatitude that Jesus expands in verse 22 and 23. About when you're rejected and you're excluded. Why? Not just for any reason, not just because you're a bit weird. You're rejected and excluded because of the Son of Man, because that's Jesus' description for himself. Jesus makes all the difference. He's the help that we won't look to if we feel like we've got everything. And he's the answer that we must look to when we realise that we don't have everything. What we might build for ourselves is so temporary. It's not going to last, whether that's a business or a lifestyle that we've managed to achieve, whether it's some sort of online following, it's temporary. But Jesus enables us to build for eternity because he puts us in a right place compared to what stands in the way of living for eternity. At the cross, he deals with what would have meant that we had to live a life apart from God for eternity. Instead, we can live life in the pleasure of God, in that blessed place. That difference can happen because Jesus enables it through the cross and dealing with what needed to be dealt with. So, are you feeling full now? Are you feeling like, I think I've pretty much got life together? I've got most of the things that I wanted to chase after. And if you have, just encourage you to ask yourself, is it truly fulfilling? Or have you kind of got those things and you're still kind of wondering then, well, what now? What comes next? You see, what's unfolded here is that one day we're going to see that God had the back of so many who seem to be nobodies, who seem to have no one to help, whose lives seem so ordinary, even miserable. But God had their back. He was concerned, he noticed, and so they're in a blessed position when from the world's perspective, from our right here and now perspective, it looked like they didn't. They weren't blessed. Just puts it in a different orientation. We will see one day in God's economy a very different assessment. That there is, as he puts it in verse 23, great reward, worth this incredible, exuberant rejoicing over, not a despair because of those circumstances. The point isn't that we pursue poverty and that we pursue hunger as if it's a goal to strive for. The point is that we pursue Jesus, the answer, and that we need not fear what seems to be missing out. We need not fear what seems to be failing by the standard of the ads and the magazines and our social media feeds if we're pursuing Jesus. See, it means that we can commit to being at youth rather than, even though it means that we could be getting better grades if we did a bit more study at that time, or we could have been hanging out with some other friends who probably won't be there. And we'd like to be in with them. It means that we'll be able to commit to serving through helping with morning tea after church, or helping in the music team, or getting along to that working bee when we could be using that time to work and build a bigger house, a bigger, nicer house. And so it might feel as we pursue into those things that others are going to look at us and say, you're missing out. You're getting left in the slow lane because of these choices. But one day it's going to be recognised that it's really of greatest worth. It'll mean we're able to build relationships, to take the time to build relationships with our neighbours who don't yet know about Jesus, or our work colleagues who don't know about Jesus, when we could be going on lots of expensive holidays. It'll mean we might be willing to invite people into our house, when that might mean that it kind of wrecks the peace and quiet of our special space. It might even kind of upset the pristine decor. They might even damage some stuff. But in God's economy, it's going to put on a different perspective. It'll mean we might be willing to even put aside a promising career in order to pursue ministry in a more significant, or maybe even a full-time capacity. Maybe we'll uproot and we'll go and do some mission work somewhere. You see, such choices don't make any sense in regards to or from the perspective of the typical expectations of what we see as the good life. But they do make sense from the perspective of eternity. Many people seem to have it all, but that's not the end of the story. Of course, it's so easy to get sucked in, isn't it? We see people with nice things. We see people enjoying nice stuff, who seem to be liked by lots of people, admired. They're succeeding, they're enjoying life. And that life promises so much. We think, if only I could have that. It's so easy to get sucked into that way of thinking. It's hard to commit to an eternity that we kind of can't really see when we can see all this nice stuff around us. So don't fool ourselves into thinking, we'll just naturally chase what's truly of worth. This doesn't come naturally. We don't see it naturally. We need to ask for God's grace that gives us the insight to be able to see things from His perspective, to pursue what doesn't come naturally, to recognise what is truly of value when we're bombarded with so many things that promise to be of value and really aren't of enduring value. We need God's grace to think this way. It's not going to happen naturally. Even if you're inclined to, well, hey, I'm listening to this sermon, I'm here, like I'm living for God, but there's so many ways we're pursuing it to some degree, but there's still this longing to be able to have the best of both worlds. And then as we get that grace, the insight that comes from that, we recognise it's not just about resignation of being able to sort of, okay, I'll resign myself not to have those things that I really would love to have otherwise. But then it's rather a matter of, we actually start to recognise, there's an urgency here. That there's so many people around me who are chasing after these things, and they feel like they're bringing them happiness, or they will bring them happiness, and they're chasing stuff that's just going to be vapor in the end. And so I will have a heart to actually reach these people for whom the outcome is actually, whoa, you're chasing after something that won't mean anything, though it looks so promising now. Will create in us a sense of urgency that they don't have it all. That's not the path to the good life. And they need to know what the good life really is. Take the perspective of eternity. It gives a radically different view of what's important. A radically different perspective of what we can achieve, or what we have achieved. A radically different evaluation of the good life. Now, I've tried to capture that as best I can. I'm going to leave you with a helpful illustration from Francis Chan. You may have seen it before. It's been around for a little while, but every time I sort of rewatch it, I just think it just captures it so well. It's a simple and effective illustration about what are we really living for.
imagine this rope. Okay, pretend this rope just goes on forever. Now imagine that this rope is a timeline of your existence. You just exist forever. You see this red part? This would represent your time on earth. You've got a few short years here on earth, and then you've got all of eternity somewhere else. And what blows me away is some of you, all you think about is this red part. It's all you think about. You're consumed with this. You go, oh man, I can't wait till here. You know what? I'm going to work hard. I'm going to save so I can really enjoy this part right here. And you're consumed with that. And you're thinking, oh man, am I going to get to travel? Am I going to eat well? Am I going to do this during this part? And I'm like, are you kidding me? What about this? What about all this stuff? It's crazy to me because the Bible teaches that what I do during this little red part determines how I'm going to exist for millions and millions and millions of years forever. And so why would I spend this little red part trying to make myself as comfortable as possible, enjoying myself as much as I can? Paul says, look, I'm going to live my life for this mission. I'm going to spend my life, invest my life for this moment when I cross that finish line. See, I'm going to forget about all this stuff I could enjoy, and I'm not going to look around. I'm going to be like a runner, just looking at that moment when I face God, because when I face Him, then I don't get this chance over again. We get one chance at this life on earth, and it can end at any second for any of us. We've got one chance at this, and then comes eternity. And see, people look at some of my decisions and go, oh, you're so stupid because that's going to really affect this. I go, no, you're stupid because that's going to affect all of this. Man, I'm serious. I look at the way people live and I go, wow, that is so crazy. You are so crazy. You're going to do that right now, just to enjoy right now, not even knowing if you have tomorrow, and you think that's smart and that I'm dumb.